check. 1, 2. Hey, check. 1, 2. Mic check for cameras. Cameras are good? Beautiful. Thank you.
Sorry, just me. 2-minute warning.
Everybody knows.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How's that? 5, 4, 3, 2. Better like that? Okay.
Get away from it all. Go down the Kokomo. Jamaica, ooh, I wanna take you to Bermuda, Bahama. Come on, pretty.
Walk out while I'm doing this. Hello, mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Everyone's sound levels good in the back? All right.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to see you all. Truly. I want to talk today about a topic that has not gotten enough attention, but probably is the single most important issue that drives every other issue. We've been talking about a new New York City and how to make New York City even better, address the issues that we now have, and improve it. This is a test for you, Mr. Sif. What is the most important four-letter word for New York City's future? I will not even comment on that. Jobs, J-O-B-S, four-letter word, not four words. No, that's okay, that's okay. It's about jobs. And because jobs drives everything, right? Jobs drives opportunity, drives growth, drives the revenue for the city and the state, how much government can actually spend, and it drives population. If you don't have jobs, if people are not coming in for jobs, if people are leaving, it drives the population center. The numbers on private sector jobs are truly frightening. Fewer than 1,000 private sector jobs were added during the first half of this year. That is the slowest rate of growth outside of a recession or the pandemic since 2003. This is a chart I borrowed from the New York Times. But if you look at the rate of job growth in 2025, it's barely visible. And compare that to the past years, and it is really stark and frightening. The unemployment rate in New York City is 4.7%. That's higher than the state or the national average. So it's clear that the economy is slowing. When you have a slowing economy, plus you have an existing state and city deficit, that, my friends, is a serious difficulty. And we've lived through that before. When you have a slowing economy and you have a New York City and New York State deficit, and you have a reduction in federal aid, that is a nightmare scenario. And that's what we're looking at now, right? That's the trifecta. The economy slows, you already have a deficit, you look to the federal government, which is often helpful, and there's actually a reduction in federal aid. What is happening? Well, the experts say that the new mobility post-COVID, which we've all been talking about, which changed the whole demographic pattern, you see a shifting to the so-called sunshine states and the low-cost states. 1.4 million have left the New York City area. 1 million have left Los Angeles. So it's not just a New York City problem. It's post-COVID, you're more mobile, you have remote work, your workplace is more flexible, or your workplace moves, and they're primarily moving to the south and the southwestern states. Texas, Florida, Arizona, Tennessee, Dallas seeing very large gains. Big issue in New York is affordability, and we all talk about affordability. But affordability and economic growth are inextricably linked, right? There is no concept of affordability that is divorced from the economy. Affordability is based on your ability to afford, which is based on your ability to earn. And nothing is affordable if you don't have a job. World Bank Group said job creation is one of the most effective ways to defeat poverty and to grow prosperity. 3 driving forces are identified as the economic slowdown. Financial industry moving outside of New York City, which has been happening, which has accelerated. The uncertainty about the tariff situation, which is on a national level, and obviously nothing we can do about here for a number of reasons. And then the replacement of jobs by this rapid AI innovation. The strong private sector economy is the key to a vibrant city, right? We all talk about the great things that government can do, and government can do this, and government can do that. It's all dependent on government having the revenue to do it. Government having the revenue to do it is dependent on the private sector generating jobs and paying taxes. With this slowdown, we need an affirmative plan to combat the economic forces at work. If we do nothing, you're going to see those numbers continue to decrease. So we need an affirmative agenda to counter that economic trend. And I have several proposals. Number one, a $1.5 billion 5-borough economic transformation capital fund, which would be over 5 years. Focus on attracting businesses, not just to Manhattan, but to all 5 boroughs, where you attract businesses, and part of the attraction is you say, I will invest along with you and with private sector capital. Second, in the first 90 days of the administration, I want to go through all the regulations and cut the red tape that is driving businesses, especially small businesses, crazy. What happens in government is the regulations just build, they just layer. And nobody ever says, well, hold on a second, let's go back and review all of them. And are they still necessary? Are they redundant? What was passed 15 years ago that no longer makes sense? I want to launch New York City, which is promotes entrepreneurship. You have underutilized city property. You have B and C commercial space that is underutilized. Convert them into mixed-use hubs, tech, clean energy, advanced manufacturing, offer startup grants to startup enterprises and entrepreneurs. So stay here, start a business here. If you're thinking of starting a business, come to New York. We'll help provide you with space and a startup grant. Also, market internationally and market to companies all across the globe and say, New York City is the place you want to be, and we will actually work with you, we'll facilitate your creating of a business here, and we'll invest along with you, providing seed capital. On top of the specific economic development activities, improve the quality of life. Because a big part of what people are doing is they are just shopping quality of life. And with this new freedom and this new mobility, they want to live in a place that they want to live. Their tolerance for the indignity of difficult places to live has waned. You don't have to endure a place that you'd rather not live. You move. So improve the quality of life. And that is public safety, which we've talked about. That's the homeless, mentally ill being off the streets. That is investing in our parks, our green space, our greenways. So yes, you live in a dense city, but in the evening, on the weekends, there's a place to recreate, and increase tourism, which is a major economic engine for this city. We have every attraction you can imagine. If you improve the quality of life, you can then improve tourism. Bottom line, The trends are against us, and the trend lines are frightening, and they only get changed if you change them. They're not going to change on their own. Those downward arrows are not going to turn unless you turn them. And that's government policy, and that's government action. And that's what we should be talking about now. The last thing we want to do now is do anything that would exacerbate the situation with anti-business policies. We're already at a tipping point. The last thing we want to do is forecast or communicate or enact anything that is anti-business. New York needs business. New York is all about business. It has always been all about business. We're the entrepreneurial capital of the country. We're the entrepreneurial capital of the world is our aspiration. You want to start a business, you want to join a business, you want to be the best at whatever you do, you come to New York City. We were founded as a place of commerce. We are a place of business. And we want to make sure that what we say and what we do is consistent with that. And this anti-business rhetoric, this anti-capitalist rhetoric is very destructive and dangerous, especially at this point in time, because they have options. They don't have to be here. They can pick up and leave. And you know that's the case because they have been picking up and leaving, right? I tease the real estate industry that they're the one industry that can't leave because literally their foundations are in your city. Absent the real estate industry, anyone can pick up and relocate. And that is a new awareness for us. You know, for many years, New York took for granted that this is the only place you could be if you were serious about business. Where else would you go? Of course you have to be in New York. And they treated business that way, that there was no alternative. What, are you going to move and leave New York? Nobody will take you seriously. You can move, and they can take you seriously. So you don't have that benefit anymore, and we're going to have to adjust our thinking accordingly, and we're going to have to act accordingly, and we're going to have to induce and seduce business to come and grow and stay. And when you look at those economic numbers, you have to do it quickly, and you have to be very serious about it. Questions, comments?
Governor, do you have any thoughts that when you made the comments about Mr. Mamdani living in a rent-stabilized apartment, that might in itself lead to economic instability? Because folks who move out of a rent-stabilized apartment because you're telling them they're not allowed to be comfortable, that then puts economic burden on people, or are hearing that message as it's not the right rent amount unless they're feeling economically burdened by it.
No, I never said that. I said the exact opposite, as a matter of fact. We passed a law in 2019 that said nobody will be displaced from a rent-stabilized unit. So you can move into a rent-stabilized unit, you can wind up getting promoted, you can wind up making a lot of money. Some people have suggested an income cap on people, tenants who live in a rent-stabilized unit. So when you hit this cap, then you had to leave the rent-stabilized unit.
Do you support that cap?
No, that was rejected. That was 2019. The inverse is when the unit is vacant and a new tenant is coming in, then that new tenant should be a tenant who is what, quote unquote, rent burdened. Rent burdened is 30% of your income for rent, which is the standard all across the board, 30%. It's a nationwide standard. It's a standard in public housing, Section 8, et cetera. So when you have a vacant rent stabilized, then rent it to someone who needs it. Rent stabilized units are the bulk of our affordable housing, right? You have public housing, NYCHA units, you have some Section 8 certificates, but then you have rent stabilized units, which are about 40% of the units, 60% are market rate. The rent stabilized units, that 40% was supposed to be for the rent burdened tenants, right? That's all we have are the rent stabilized units. And then you have market rate. So they were supposed to be for the rent burdened tenants. If you're in the rent stabilized apartment, fine, nobody's going to displace you. But once it becomes vacant, then it should be rented to a person who is rent burdened. If not that, Andrew, you have no alternative for a person. We all talk about affordability, affordable housing, affordable housing. All right, so the people who have the highest rent burden, they should be a priority for rent stabilized units. And if you can afford a market rate unit, then get a market rate unit. But if you can afford a market rate unit, why should you be taking a rent stabilized unit from somebody who actually needs the rent stabilized unit?
Do you believe Mr. Mamdani can afford a market rate unit?
Do I believe a single individual making $142,000 who has other assets can afford a market rate unit? Yes. You're not rent burdened. His rent is $2,300 or something like that per month. You're not rent burdened. By definition, you're not rent burdened, right? You're not spending over 30% of your rent or 30% of your income for rent. So it's math. By definition, you are not rent burdened. It's a mathematical equation. It's, are you spending more than 30% of your income for rent? Capiche?
I think a lot of New Yorkers who make $100,000 or $142,000 might take issue with your characterization of how comfortable it is to pay rent.
Look, it's not comfortable, right? But 30% is the definition of rule of thumb of what percent of your income should go to rent. Now, you can say, I think 30% is too high. I'd rather it be 20%. Yes, but 30% is the rule of thumb. Of course, people would want to spend less, but 30% is the rule of thumb. And 30%, if you are spending 40, 50, 60% of your rent, of your income for rent, that's a much worse situation, right? So yes, it's affordable housing, but you have to prioritize people who have the greater need. If you can afford it, I can't afford it, then why are you taking a unit? That is government controlled. This is not random. This is a government regulated unit. Government regulates the rent on that unit to protect people who need affordable housing. I need it more than you need it. I know you want it because you want to save money, but I need it more than you need it.
All right, Ben.
Two questions for you, Governor. The first, you're saying you want 90 days to review it, but I mean, I imagine in your head you do have what do you feel like is the regulation, the red tape that would have the most impact if you cut it? And then the second question is a sort of a broader one. In this moment of time in this campaign, you're doing events like this, you're going to Abney, you're doing fundraisers. What are you trying to accomplish right now? What is your priority as you sort of retool and pivot the way you're running your race?
The priority is different than in the primary. My priority is much more on retail, so beyond the things you mentioned, it's just much more meeting people, groups, on the street, seeing people, traveling around more. That's the number one priority. The professional groups you mentioned aren't really a top priority, but we're doing some of that also. I am not doing much fundraising. I did that. I did probably 70 events in the primary fundraising events, and that took a lot of time, so I'm not doing that now. But I also want to communicate my policy agenda, what I would do, such as this, juxtaposed with my opponent's plans and how I think they are not productive for the city. So it's the juxtaposition of those two things.
And then just on the regulation, you want 90 days to review, but I imagine you've thought about this. Is there some regulation you see, like, you tell us about now that you feel like cut this and will have an impact?
Yeah, I don't want to pick on any one now, because every regulation you pick, then there's going to be a counter voice that supports that.
It just helps to get a sense of your brain and where you are on these things. I mean, is there like a bucket of that? I don't know, it's sort of a broader thing.
You have regulations and budget items. It's the same exercise on both that have been there for decades. No regulation goes away. No budget item goes away. They just exist until you ferret it out and say, hold on a second, here's this regulation. Where did this come from? Why does it require this type of plumbing in this type of building? Why does it require this many fire exits for this? Just regulations that at one time made sense, but which may not make sense any longer. Why are there these restrictions on this grant? Why can't it be a grant instead of a loan? Just going back and scrubbing all of this stuff, which is a tedious, painful process. You're going to have a deficit. I took over the state government. We had a $10 billion deficit. The budget was about $96 billion, okay? I brought the budget from $96 billion down to about $85 billion. How did you do that? With a lot of difficulty. Have you ever heard of a budget going down? All they do is add, right? You take last year's number. Ben Oreskes has a great new idea this year. Okay, that's $1 billion. We lay that on top. Yes, the art form of government is we're not just going to lay it on top. We're going to scrub the entire budget, which is the way people run their homes, right? Who have to live in the real world. And that's what you have to do with government.
Courtney, do you have a question? Yes. So, Governor, since you proposed Zohran's law, Mamdani came out with a video of his own saying you should release your client list. Will you release your client list, and can you shed some light on what exactly you have been doing professionally, who your clients were, what kind of work you were doing since leaving the governor's office?
Yeah, let's talk about this for a second. Zohran's law said that a person who is rent burdened should rent a rent-stabilized apartment. What Zohran said, he said a number of things. He said when he rented the apartment, he did not know it was a rent-stabilized apartment. He didn't know until he moved in. But he said at the time he was a tenant advocate, and a tenant advocate vis-a-vis landlords. If you are a tenant advocate, you know what you know how to do? Read a lease, right? That's like the basic function. You read a lease. If you read a lease on a rent-stabilized unit, you know what it says? Rent-stabilized. So it's implausible to me that he didn't know that it was a rent-stabilized unit until he moved in. He then said, well, I didn't intend to stay, I was going to move out. That was 7 years ago. He hasn't moved out. And during that time, he voted for a raise for the New York State Assembly people, who now make $142,000 a year, the highest paid assembly people in the United States of America, is the New York State Assembly. They were in session about 70 days, so it's about $2,000 a day. That's his explanation of how he wound up in this rent-stabilized unit. My point is you should use the rent-stabilized units for people who actually need them. Everybody wants to pay less rent, yes, but the people who are in the most dire circumstances should get the units that are government stabilized, and that's rent stabilized. What I have been doing is a number of things. I've done podcasts. I've advocated for certain causes that are dear to me, worked with organizations, pro-Israel organizations, among others, practicing law, no clients before the city or the state government, haven't appeared before city or state government, and I haven't done any lobbying work. And the matters were all private matters.
So will you release the client list?
No, they were private clients, and there's an attorney-client privilege, but there was no representation before any city government or state government.
Can you give us some examples of who some of your clients were? Obviously, Benjamin Netanyahu and his case before the ICC is one of them.
He was not a client. I agreed to help a team that was put together by Alan Dershowitz that was basically contesting the jurisdiction of the ICC, which is a court that this country does not recognize as having jurisdiction. And that was obviously pro bono.
Joe?
Governor, how you doing?
Good, Joe.
I have 3 questions for you. Do you have an estimate of how many jobs might be created or saved by your proposals here today? 2, I was wondering, are you endorsed by Local 237? Is there any reason we're having the press conference here today? Are they supporting your campaign? And 3, I'm curious, you made comments about Mr. Mamdani's residence in this rent-stabilized apartment, that it's taking away from someone who needs it. But there is no means testing now. So if he said tomorrow, you know what, you're right, Governor, I'm going to move out, someone who makes even more money could move in. There's no guarantee that the single mother with, kids in the homeless shelter is going to get that apartment. So how is he abusing the system in that way?
Yeah. The Zohran's law would fix that. It would say only rent-overburdened people can rent a rent-stabilized apartment.
Right, and that makes sense. I'm just wondering how he's abusing the system now if it's not set up that way currently.
Well, you're right. He is not violating the law now. I never said he was violating the law. However, as a public official who's concerned about affordable housing, he knows what the rent stabilization law is and why we have rent-stabilized units. And rent-stabilized units are the precious few units that we actually have that are affordable because government has been controlling the rent. So if you're so concerned about affordable housing, and that's a major thrust of what you believe, then why did you take one of the units that government had set aside for people who were rent burdened when you weren't?
Well, I guess my point is they're not set aside for those people. You're proposing they should be.
Legally, but that is the purpose of the program. I mean, why is government regulating the rent? Why do you think they do that? Except to keep the rent low so people can afford them who need to afford them. We're in the Teamsters Hall because I thought you were a Teamster. They endorse me. They do endorse me. And I'm a fan of Local 237.
The mayor's been talking about efforts.
Sorry, the
No, I can get you that, though.
So the mayor talked about, crime is down, economy's booming, record tax numbers coming in. Can you just talk about how your approach would differ from his? Where do you think he went wrong?
Well,
On record?
yeah, crime isn't down. Let's start with that, right? Some crimes are down, murder shootings are down, but overall, crime is up, right? So crime isn't down. You just saw the economic numbers. The economic numbers are staggeringly low, lowest since 2003, except for a pandemic or recession. So both of those assertions are incorrect. But you do have to get crime down. I would hire 5,300 police officers. I'd put 1,500 in the subway system. I would focus on getting the homeless, mentally ill off the streets, which we did for many, many, many years. This is not a novel situation. Oh, there were homeless people. Yes, we've had homeless people for decades. Well, they're mentally ill homeless people. Yes, we've had mentally ill homeless people for decades. And we've handled it. We've addressed it. This goes back to Ed Koch and a case called Billy Boggs, where Ed Koch wanted to remove a mentally ill person from the streets, and it was challenged legally. And the court said, if a person is mentally ill, then you can get them the help they need because they're mentally ill. So it's execution, it's implementation. The job of mayor is a job for a job of management. It is making things happen. Build the affordable housing, clean the streets, pick up the garbage, help the homeless, create jobs, recruit businesses, right? It's a purely operational job. And your points, crime is down? No. The economy's doing great? No.
All right, this is the last question. Josie, oh, I'm sorry, Bridget was here. We'll do 2 more questions. I know, I'm sorry.
Governor, you're talking a lot today about how you're putting your plans in juxtaposition with some of your challengers. Similar, I think people are looking at the juxtaposition of support among, voters and some of the, political surrogates for some of these challengers. Less than a month ago, you were on the Brian Blair show. You talked about how the candidates should adhere to the Patterson Pledge, that whoever was going to be the strongest against Mamdani come November, everyone should consolidate around them. And you were really talking about you and Mayor Adams. Just this week, Governor Patterson endorsed Mayor Adams. What do you make of that? And are you still pledging to step back? It looks like he's going to be the stronger candidate against Mamdani come November.
Yeah, I think the pledge is inarguable. It's inarguable. If you say, which both I say and Mayor Adams says, if you say that you believe the assemblyman would be an existential threat as mayor, that he's unprepared, that his policies would be a negative, serious negative for New York City, and I agree with the mayor on that, then the goal should be making sure the assemblyman does not win. And if that is the goal, in a multi-candidate race, it's very hard to beat the assemblyman because he has the Democratic line, and that brings a large number of voters with it. So put forth the best, strongest candidate, so you have the best chance of beating the assemblyman who you said is the existential threat. So it is inarguable, because if you have a multi-candidate field, it is all but as impossible to beat the assemblyman unless the other candidates basically are so diminished that they're in the single digits.
But that person who proposed that pledge is saying that that candidate is not you. So
No, the pledge is whoever was stronger in mid-September. So we don't know who's going to be stronger in mid-September. I think I'm going to be stronger in mid-September. I'm sure Mayor Adams says he's going to be stronger in mid-September. So it would be whoever is stronger at that point in time should be the candidate that goes forward. The other candidate should defer. And between now and then, everybody campaign, see who's the strongest candidate.
Joseph, hi,
How are you?
So you were talking earlier about the need for revenue coming in for government to function, but where is this, $1.5 billion coming from for this new fund you're proposing? And then also to follow up on Ben's question, are you going to look at any, like Department of Buildings, FDNY, initiating a charter revision commission review on it, trying to cut back red tape?
The 1.5 would come from capital. Capital plan is about 170 billion. The 1.5 would be over 5 years, so it's about 300 million a year, which is relatively minor investment from the capital budget. And yes, look at all of them. Look at all of them. You know, Governor Al Smith, great governor of New York, at one time took the entire state government and said, I'm going to revise the entire state government. I'm just going to start with a blank piece of paper and reorganize the entire government. And it was a tremendous undertaking, but he did it. It worked very well. I think you've had 12 years of apathy in this government. Frankly, since Mayor Bloomberg, I don't think you've had somebody who's really focused on the management of the government. I don't think Mayor de Blasio did it. I don't think Mayor Adams did it. I think Mayor Bloomberg took management very seriously. That's what he did. He was a manager. He was not a politician, but he was a manager. We then hired politicians who were not managers. And government over time atrophies. And for lack of a better term, it layers. It layers. I have seen it myself many, many times. I took over as HUD secretary, and there were books of regulations. And when you started to say to someone, why? Where did this come from? No answer. Where did this come from? No answer. So yes, you have to go agency by agency, Department of Buildings, why this, why this, why this, small business, why this, why this. But that is the only way to do it. You have to strip it down so you only have the regulations and the laws that actually make sense today. Not what made sense in 1995, what makes sense today. And it is the tedious work of government, but that's what government is. How did I get the state budget from 96 to 85 billion? How? You guys have been covering government. When is the last time you heard a government budget go down? When was the last time the city budget dropped significantly? It doesn't, because nobody goes through that exercise. Politically, it's very difficult, and there are a lot of special interests that work very hard to get those things in there. But you don't have the luxury. When you're losing economic growth, you're losing revenue, you don't have the luxury of not doing it, because you have to be easier to do business with, more business friendly, more facile, more welcoming, and that's going to require you to revamp and figure out what obstacles you've been putting up that have been problematic for no good reason.
So back to the fund, where is that money supposed to actually be going? What programs would that fund?
That would go to capital projects that would bring in businesses. Amazon. Amazon was a was opening a second headquarters. This is a few years ago. And I worked day and night to get Amazon to choose New York City as a location for their second headquarters. 15,000 jobs. And New York City and New York State were going to make an investment along with Amazon. They were going to build an entire campus. They would have jump-started an entire cluster economy, would have been a home run. That type of initiative and investment, where we said to Amazon, if you come here, you invest X, we will invest Y, we'll help you build the building through the capital fund, you'll create 15,000 jobs, we'll jumpstart the tech economy. That's what has to be done. That's what every other government is doing. We have mayors and governors from other states who come in here and meet with businesses and say, move to my state, I'll build you an office complex. Move to my state, I won't charge you any income tax. It is a very competitive environment.
So are you looking to draw on any specific companies?
No, but any company, right? We just want jobs. Specifically, I think we could be highly competitive in the AI sector. I think that is going to be the boom sector, and I think it would be a great addition to New York. It's still blossoming, so I think we have an opportunity. And New York has one advantage that all these companies need. Young people want to be here. Why did we win Amazon? Because young, talented people graduate and they want to be here. And those companies need the young talent. And the virtuous cycle is young people want to be in New York, the companies want to come to New York because they need the young talent, and then the young talent comes to New York because that's where the companies are. That's Amazon. The postscript to the Amazon is the socialists organized against Amazon because it was corporate welfare and killed the project. And we lost thousands of jobs just on pure, misguided political ideology. Thank you very much, guys.
guess so, right? We've only ever talked before, other than that. I'm always like leaving and you're coming, or,
Yeah, coming and going.
or we would like edit together or stuff, I guess.
Yeah, but you know that's a different story.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Camera's on. I just gotta go grab my arm.
What a time. Can we fix this iron floor? Hello, are you here?
How about I do it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How do I look? Yay! Little wow.
Okay, okay. Well,
How about now, Nick?
Okay.
How are we doing?
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes,
Any
I'm
better?
sorry. The poster fell down.
A little louder? Okay.
I will give a heads up. Okay. No. Okay, we're good.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
Okay, sounds good.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. If it changes. Okay, sounds good. Okay, we're up the road.
Christian. Yep. Good afternoon, muy buenas tardes. My name is Gustavo Rivera. Welcome to the Bronx. I'm state senator for the 33rd District in the Bronx. This is my neighborhood, well, before redistricting. 195th University is where I used to live, but this is where I've been for many, many years. And this is a business that I've come to many, many times, bought my latest Knicks gear in this fine establishment. But we are here today, and I'm very glad to be welcoming Zohran Mamdani back to the Bronx. It's not the first time that he's been here, will not be the last. Today we're talking very specifically about small businesses. We are in one today. We want to talk about how the actions that have been taken at the national government need a response from local authorities, need a response from states and localities like the city of New York. And want to talk about how Zohran has a very clear vision of what small businesses mean to the city of New York, what they mean to the state of New York, and how important it is that we protect them. He's going to talk about the measures that he's going to implement, and I'm very much looking forward to working along with him to make sure that that happens. Y un poco en español, mi nombre es Gustavo Rivera, senador estatal de aquí del Bronx. Estoy con mi compañero Zohran Mamdani, que va a ser el próximo alcalde de la ciudad de Nueva York, porque sabemos claramente que los ataques del gobierno nacional, lo que está haciendo Trump, está destruyendo muchas partes de nuestras ciudades y estados, y particularmente los pequeños negocios. Y estamos aquí para hablar cómo podemos defender los pequeños negocios a nivel de la ciudad. Eso es de lo que él va a hablar hoy. But to give us a little bit of a perspective on how it is that these things can impact what happens at the very local level, we are joined by the president of from the Kingsbridge Merchants Association, from a store just down the street called Blue Shoes. Not Blue Shoes, mind you. Blue Shoes. And that is Christian Ramos. Christian.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Senator Rivera. Thank you, Manabe. Thank you so much again. Thank you. I think it's after more than 20, 30 years, as a different generation, my father, and different line of, as a shoe repair guy, very a small business owner, started for a long time. It's something type of business almost disappeared, but we're here today with a new candidate, very young fellow who would like to make changes our neighborhood, our district, and definitely this is the time today. I write some words in the name of the Merchants Association, Kingsbridge Merchant Association, who I represented, guys. I'm a small business owner on Kingsbridge Road, and I'm a member of Kingsbridge Merchant Association. For more than 20 years, a small business owner did not have any type of protection and any type of regulation. Like, for example, I'll give you some samples. License inspection, have a 10 minimum year lease. That's unfair that we open a store and 3-4 years lease. Very clear what I say. We have to close the gate down because we don't have no lease for 5 or 10 years easily. Another one thing is like real estate property taxes. Something very funny, Mr. Our candidate pandemic, I would like to say, and remarkable. If we are not the landlord, how we have to pay real estate property taxes and the type amount of money, whatever the landlords want to. That's the things are regulated and have to be clear. A small business owner, every day we got tickets and fines without a warning. They just see the center inspectors, they just see and say, it's fine for this, fine for that, but they don't give you a warning 1 week or 2 weeks before I give you a fine. And we're not talking about $20, $40 fine. We talk about hundreds and hundreds, sometimes thousands. And Mom and Pop store, we are keeping our door open to our customer and support our family. That's the main concern about it. My father opened the store, make a hard effort, and I keep on doing it. Something very simple, as a fixing shoes, selling shoes right here in the corner, so we don't want to keep the store closed and put the gate down. This is the point very clear in these days. With the Trump administration, do not cut any funding for small businesses because we really need it. We need to really support our stores, our storefronts, our ceiling, our floor. So that type of funding or grants gonna help the small businesses. As a merchant, we are in the city commercial crisis. Any fund, any grant, they could help the small businesses owner. Today, we have a candidate who engaged and put his word as a priority to keep and help our small business owner, not only in this district, not in District 14, it's in the whole city of New York City. In the northwest side over here, we are in this corridor, Kingsbridge Road, more than 200 businesses, from nail salon, barbershop, Bodega, not only that part, it's not only Latino like I am. I'm from Ecuador, obviously, and you know about it. You meet a lot of Ecuadorian guys in Queens. I'm from Ecuador in the Dominican neighborhood, but the important thing in Skimbershaw in this district, we have from everywhere. We got black African American, we have Vietnamese, we got everywhere. And the last sentence that I would like to say, as a small business owner, we would like to have, in the name of the merchant, today, we want solution, not only hopes, not only desire, we demanding compromise and dedication for our city. Thank you so much, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mamdani. Thank you.
And I wanted to introduce right before that, just because we are in their store, and want to make sure that she has an opportunity to share her family's trip, or her family's struggles in keeping this beautiful store and the others that there are in the city of New York together, and that is Christine No.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here and spotlighting, small businesses. And I will say, it's been a really challenging economic environment for businesses to operate, and increasingly we really need support from government, whether it's on the local level or the federal level, to support us with a lot of the issues around increasing costs, and as well as just making sure that we're able to create job opportunities for the folks that we employ. Noble itself here has been here since 1982, and we have employed many, many folks from the neighborhood and continue to do so, and would love to continue to do so as well. So really leaning on our local elected officials to do all that they can to continue to support us. So thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you to Christine. It is a pleasure to be here and to stand here alongside both small business owners, representatives from a merchant association, and also an elected leader of the Bronx, who I've been proud to call both a friend and a colleague and a supporter of this campaign for many, many months. We are here today on the fourth stop of our 5-borough tour to speak about how Bronxites cannot afford the city that they call home. That is a struggle that many residents of the Bronx feel individually. It's also a struggle that I know our small businesses are feeling at this moment. From 2020 to 2022, the population of the Bronx dropped by 6.3%. That's more than any other borough in New York City. People are leaving this borough, they're leaving this city because it's too expensive. We are the most expensive city in the United States of America. When I interviewed voters on Fordham Road a week after Election Day in November, I heard this message again and again. An inability to afford that which was within reach 4 years prior. Whether it be citations of rent, Con Edison bills, childcare, or even a MetroCard. That it felt like every aspect of daily life was getting further and further out of reach. And so it should come as no surprise that there were many neighborhoods in this same borough that swung towards Donald Trump in the last presidential election. These are some of the very New Yorkers who have worked the hardest while receiving the least. And we see this story again and again in so many who've been pushed out of the borough they call home. And they heard a candidate, now a president, who ran on a message of cheaper groceries, on making for an easier cost of living, on delivering that which seemed out of reach. And yet, we know him to not only be insincere, ridiculous, and horrific, but to prey upon a very real sense of despair in the lives of New Yorkers and Americans across the country. And so we've seen that despite that campaign of cheaper groceries, he has instead cut SNAP benefits. And we know that this doesn't just impact New Yorkers who have those benefits, it also impacts the small businesses that rely on them. We know that 27% of revenue in grocery stores here in the Bronx comes from SNAP. We know that that number increases significantly when we speak to bodega owners. We know that these kind of cuts, they have an impact on the very fabric of the city that we call home. And what we're seeing as I stand next to the chair of the Health Committee in the New York State Senate is this has been accompanied by a decision and an act through legislation that Donald Trump has ushered through Washington to throw millions of Americans off of their health insurance. one that has a direct impact on New Yorkers right here across this state. And this is being done all in the name of the largest wealth transfer from Americans who have the least to those who have more than they know what to do with. And in the face of this, we see a necessity, a responsibility of leadership to stand up to that kind of a vision that essentially pillages the very boroughs that we call home. And so I stand here as the Democratic nominee in clear and sincere opposition to the Trump agenda that is preying upon New Yorkers borough to borough, and also in opposition to candidates such as former Governor Cuomo, who would conspire with the architect of such a vision in a moment when New Yorkers are looking for is an answer of how we fight back, how we keep New Yorkers in their homes, safe from ICE, as well as from an affordability crisis that is pushing them out of that same apartment. And we know that if Andrew Cuomo were to win this race, Donald Trump would find an ally in City Hall, an ally who has been funded by the same billionaires that gave us the second Trump administration, an ally that has been funded by $1 million check from DoorDash at a moment when New Yorkers are asking how we can make our streets safer. We have politicians being purchased by those that seek to influence labor, street, and safety regulations. And so what we need right now is a mayor who will stand up for New Yorkers, one who will look at small businesses and see partners in the work that is to be done. And that is why I'm so proud of the vision that we have put forward, together with leaders like State Senator Rivera, that will cut fines and fees for small businesses by 50%, that says the days of having to spend $25 a year as a restaurant for the right to sell a frozen dessert, they have to come to an end. Because like so many of the rules that are a relic of a bygone era, so is this. And the days of us thinking it is acceptable that the best teams within New York City government that are supposed to assist small businesses, only being utilized by 3% of small business owners, those days have to come to an end. And that is why we are going to have a mom and pop czar in our administration. That is why we are going to increase funding to those best teams by more than $10 million. That is why we look at a system that requires a New Yorker to fill out 24 forms, go to 7 agencies, and attend 12 in-person events to open up a barbershop as a system that is broken and a system that needs changing. And so we are going to do those things in partnership with businesses just like yours, in recognition of the fact that you have been here for decades, and of the fact that New Yorkers come from all over the world, and one of the things that binds us together is an aspiration of what life could be like in this city. And so often it is small businesses that are fulfilling those aspirations for New Yorkers. So I thank you so much for coming today. I thank you for standing alongside me in our clear and sincere commitment to stand against this agenda from Washington, D.C., and stand for an agenda that makes us a city that New Yorkers can afford. Thank you.
Great, we'll take some questions. Yeah, Morgan.
Hi. So some news broke that former President Barack Obama called you. I was hoping that you could help explain just when exactly that call happened. What was that conversation like? What was discussed? And did he signal that he could be endorsing you? And then I have a follow-up when you're done with that.
Follow.
Always. More questions.
That call happened soon after the primary. It was a call that I was honored to receive, and the contents of it were focused on the campaign that we ran, the importance of hope in our politics, and the ways in which we govern to deliver on that. And the lessons of that conversations are ones that I hold close to me as we continue to build this campaign to win the general election. And it was an honor to receive that time and those reflections from the former president.
Did he signal that he could be endorsing you? And separately, have you also met with Senator Chuck Schumer at all? I know he said that he wanted to. Just wondering if that happened.
I leave the decision of endorsements to the president. I can tell you that my focus continues to be on the 8.5 million New Yorkers who call the city their home, and it continues to animate our campaign on how we deliver this campaign to make it a city that they can afford.
And then Schumer, I'm sorry.
We've spoken on the phone a number of times.
Yeah, Liz.
Hi.
Hello.
With respect to the conversation with Obama, I was wondering whether the subject of othering or xenophobia came up, because he was subjected to that as a candidate, and you are as well, and I was wondering whether he had talked to you about how to handle that.
We spoke about the importance in a moment such as this, where politics is often characterized by a language of darkness, the necessity of hope in how we speak, in how we orient ourselves to the world. And I'm lucky to have the example of the president in understanding the ways in which we confront these challenges, which, as you've said, they are not hypothetical. Just yesterday, we had a press conference in Staten Island, and I was so heartened by the response of so many at that same press conference, and yet to get to them, I had to walk through a number of New Yorkers who told me to go back where I came from. And I know that those New Yorkers are representative just of themselves, and yet sadly, that is what politics has become for far too many.
Yeah, go ahead, Brenda. So, Andrew Cuomo also had a press conference today. First time he's talked to reporters in a week. Two things that came up. He kind of geared it towards this jobs report that came out that said New York City, less than 1,000 private sector jobs were created. Horrific report. He also used that opportunity to say that you would present an anti-capitalist vision. Wondering if you can respond to that. Also, my colleague Courtney Gross asked him if he would release his client list. He said no because there would be some disclosure problem. But he's got $2.6 million in stock options for a nuclear company. And I'm wondering, with that client list release video you put out, are you trying to liken him to Jeffrey Epstein to get New Yorkers to, you know, pair him with somebody that is extremely dislikable?
I don't need to do much to make the governor appear extremely dislikable. The intent of that video was to shine a light on what journalists have uncovered over many months, which is the fact of what the former governor did after resigning in disgrace. We know that which has been reported, and yet we also know that there is likely more, because as is the case with Andrew Cuomo, when you think you found out about all of his scandals, there seems to always be another one, just beyond your view. And I'm standing here with small business owners, members of a merchant association, and having run a campaign speaking about the importance of small businesses in our city. And to hear from a former governor about the difficulties of attracting additional jobs without the recognition of what the Trump administration has done to make it so difficult. I mean, the tariffs, the business climate that he has created, and the impact to tourism in New York City. We're seeing estimates of about a $4 billion loss compared to other years in this city. That is something that has massive ramifications for the ability for our city to continue functioning as it has. And yet I cannot recall the last time the former governor even brought that up. We are less than a year away from the largest and most popular sporting event in the world coming to this city. And yet what we have is a sense among so many that they are not welcome here. And I look forward to being the first immigrant mayor of the city in generations to make clear that the world is not only welcome here, that this is the city of the world.
And on him, you know, really homing in on the anti-capitalist, putting that on you because you are a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and you have said you've been critical of capitalism. Would your policy be anti-capitalist if you were the mayor?
My policy would be to ensure that government lives up to its responsibility of ensuring dignity for each and every New Yorker, not simply determining which one is worthy of it. And I've spoken often about the fact that we need not look further than Dr. King to better understand what this vision is. He said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. We are here in New York City, a city where while nationwide income inequality has gone down, it has actually increased across these 5 boroughs. It's the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the world, but 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty. That is untenable. And to speak about job creation without also reckoning with the fact that the city has thousands of unfilled positions today. Positions which the money has been allocated for, but there is very little interest in actually ensuring someone can join our 300,000 person plus workforce. It's to show that there is little interest from the former governor in the actual act of governing. We need, if we're talking about hiring more New Yorkers, also to hear about a vision for streamlining OMB, for changing a culture of no to a culture of how, to ensure that when a New Yorker applies for a job with the city, they don't have to wait for 6 months to actually receive an approval. We know too many New Yorkers who have received an application, pursued it, received an approval, and then waited and waited and waited, and they could not afford to wait any longer.
Yeah, right here.
John the Custodio, coming to the Bronx for the city. You mentioned cutting fines and fees by 50%. Can you outline how exactly you're going to do that? And you've also talked about, the bureaucratic process takes a long time for people to get licenses and so on and so forth. How exactly are you going to cut down that time for prospective business owners?
We need not look further than the achievements of the previous administration, which cut fines and fees by 40%. And what we see, as Gustavo was saying, we have a city budget more than $115 billion. We know that we are not funding that budget in any significant way from these fines and fees. But for these small businesses, those fines and fees can be suffocating. They can be the difference in whether or not they can open their doors or whether they can keep them open. And so the focus from us will be on looking through each and every fine and fee that is being levied on a small business and reducing it by 50% across the board to ensure that we are not the reasons that it is more difficult to operate a small business. And to speak to what you were saying earlier, that the focus is on compliance, not on punishment. Because too often, these are kinds of fines and fees that are being levied without even a warning, which then begs the question, what's the intent here? Is it to raise revenue, or is it to actually bring someone into compliance with the law? And when I speak about streamlining the process, I think about the example that we saw in Pennsylvania, where the amount of time it took for a barbershop to receive its license went from a multi-week process to just 2 days. Similar things happened from 8 weeks to just less than 1 week for corporate filings. This is a question of focus, a question of looking into our bureaucracy and ensuring that it is working in the manner that was intended, because there are too many ways in which city government operates that you cannot find an answer for beyond this is how it is, and that's unacceptable.
Can you give an example of one fine or fee that you would address?
Yes, the fact that a restaurant has to pay an annual fee to the city for the right to sell a frozen dessert. I think that's ridiculous.
So you would eliminate that?
Yes.
Awesome. We have time for one more question. We go to Fox.
On that note, what's your response to critics who argue that your plan for city-run grocery stores could actually reduce competition and harm private grocery store owners and bodega owners?
The plan to have one municipal-owned grocery store in each borough, 5 in total, is part of a vision of a public option for produce, an understanding that for far too many New Yorkers, groceries are out of reach, and the importance in city government of reasonable policy experimentation, seeing how we could help to meet that need. And this is something that is not only addressing the crisis of affordability, but also a crisis of food deserts, where we've seen, for many New Yorkers, they cannot find a grocery store within reach of a few blocks, and yet they can find fast food restaurants just around the corner. It's our job to ensure that we're meeting that need. It's not in opposition to grocery store owners or bodega owners. This is something that can together be actually used to increase competitiveness, as we've seen public options do so in the past.
So what do you say to those grocery store owners who are concerned that this could create a ricochet effect and that there's more and more city-owned grocery stores in your city?
Look, what I've said is that I am interested in working with each and every New Yorker, and I've actually spoken with a number of grocery store owners and made clear to them that I both recognize and appreciate the work that they have done, the fact that they are a critical part of our communities. And for many of these grocery stores, about 80% of which are family-owned across New York City. There are about 1,000 or so grocery stores that call the city their home. They invested in this city in the 70s, in a time when many of the larger retailers were leaving, and they did so because they believed in this city. And there's so much partnership that we can still offer those same stores in assisting them on the skyrocketing rents that they are facing, the questions of insurance, so much of that which creates instability in their business model, while also ensuring we're using every tool at our disposal to create a more affordable city for New Yorkers.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is my friend who is a huge supporter of Zohran. And he was asked me